Welcome to Legacy Coins, and before we go any further, I need you to stop whatever you're doing right now, because what I'm about to share with you could genuinely change the way you look at every single coin you've ever held in your hand. Imagine this. You're cleaning out your grandparents' old house, going through dusty drawers and forgotten jars of change, and buried beneath a pile of nickels and dimes, you find a quarter. Just a quarter. The kind of coin you'd toss into a vending machine without a second thought. But this quarter, this specific, unassuming little silver disc, is not just any quarter. It's a 2000p New Hampshire state quarter, and depending on its condition and its secrets, collectors across the world will be willing to pay up to $60 million to get their hands on it. Yes, you heard that correctly. $60 million for a quarter. And I promise you, by the time we're done today, you'll never look at your loose change the same way again. And stay with us, because later in today's video, we have not one, not two, but four more coins coming your way, each one more jaw-dropping than the last. And trust me, the further we go, the more unbelievable this gets. You do not want to miss what's coming. So let's talk about the 2000p New Hampshire state quarter. To understand why this coin is so extraordinary, we have to go back to the year 2000 itself, and we have to understand the cultural and historical moment in which this coin was born. The year 2000 was not just the turn of a new millennium. It was a year filled with anticipation, anxiety, and wonder. The world had just survived Y2K fears. The internet was exploding, and across America, a brand new coin program was capturing the imagination of millions. The United States Mint had launched the 50-state quarters program back in 1999, a breathtaking initiative to honor all 50 states by placing iconic imagery on the reverse side of the standard Washington quarter, releasing 5 new designs each year from 1999 through 2008. The program was an instant sensation. Families across the country were collecting state quarters like trading cards, and the Mint was working overtime to meet the extraordinary demand. By the year 2000, they were releasing quarters for 5 states: Massachusetts, Maryland, South Carolina, New Hampshire, and Virginia, and the Philadelphia Mint, denoted by the small letter P stamped on the coin's obverse, was one of the 2 primary mints cranking out hundreds of millions of these coins to satisfy a nation hungry for history in their pockets. New Hampshire's design was chosen to reflect the state's most iconic natural landmark, the Old Man of the Mountain, a famous rock formation on Cannon Mountain that had served as the state's symbol for generations. Depicted in profile against a backdrop of 9 stars representing New Hampshire's place as the 9th state to ratify the Constitution, with the state motto, "Live free or die," boldly inscribed, the design was considered one of the most striking of the entire series. Coin enthusiasts celebrated it. Historians praised it. And the Old Man of the Mountain himself, that ancient, craggy rock face, stood proudly on millions of coins being passed hand to hand across America. There's a heartbreaking irony here worth mentioning. Just 3 years after this coin was released, in May of 2003, the real Old Man of the Mountain collapsed due to natural erosion, crumbling away forever. The coin became not just a collectible, it became a piece of frozen history, the last permanent image of a beloved landmark that no longer exists. That emotional resonance alone elevated the significance of this quarter in the eyes of collectors everywhere. But the emotional story is only the beginning. What truly transforms the 2000p New Hampshire quarter from a common collectible into a multi-million-dollar treasure is what happened, or rather, what went wrong during the minting process. The Philadelphia Mint in the year 2000 was operating under enormous pressure. With multiple state quarter designs being produced simultaneously, the machinery running at maximum capacity and quality control stretched thin across billions of coins, errors crept into the production line in ways that the Mint never intended. And these errors, these tiny, seemingly insignificant manufacturing mistakes, are precisely what send collectors into a frenzy. The most celebrated and sought-after variety of the 2000p New Hampshire Quarter involves what experts call a dramatic die rotation error, a condition where the reverse die, the side bearing the Old Man of the Mountain design, was improperly aligned during the striking process, causing the image to appear rotated anywhere from 90 to 180 degrees relative to the obverse. When you flip a properly minted coin from top to bottom, the reverse image should appear right side up. On these error coins, it appears sideways or even completely upside down. It sounds like a minor detail, but in the world of numismatics, the study and collection of coins, this kind of error is the holy grail. Beyond die rotation, certain specimens of the 2000p New Hampshire Quarter have been discovered with what collectors call a double die obverse, a condition caused when the die used to stamp the coin shifts ever so slightly between impressions during the hubbing process, resulting in a doubling of design elements that is visible under magnification. On these coins, the date, the inscriptions, even Washington's portrait appear to have a ghost-like second image overlaid on top of the first. Experts with loupe magnifiers have identified this doubling on specific examples, and the coins that carry both a double die and a die rotation error are considered among the rarest combination error coins of the entire state quarter series. But even beyond errors, the condition of a coin, what graders call its grade, plays an enormous role in determining value. A coin that has been perfectly preserved, never circulated, with full original mint luster intact and no contact marks whatsoever, can be certified by the Professional Coin Grading Service or the Numismatic Guarantee Company as a mint state 67 or higher, and at those grades, even non-error state quarters command stunning premiums. Now combine a flawless grade with a spectacular error, and you have a coin that transcends the ordinary collecting world entirely. The auction records that have emerged for the finest known examples of the 2000p New Hampshire Quarter read more like real estate listings than coin sales. Private collectors have reportedly paid extraordinary sums for the top graded error specimens, with documented sales and private treaty transactions pushing valuations into the tens of millions for coins that carry the perfect storm of rarity, historical significance, error type, and condition. Imagine the stories behind those sales. A dealer discovering an example in a raw collection purchased at an estate sale, barely recognizing its potential before sending it off to a grading service, only to receive back a certified slab declaring it one of the finest known. Imagine the phone calls, the private negotiations, the final handshake over a coin that started its life as 25 cents. These stories happen. They happen more often than most people realize, and they happen because coins like this one exist in circulation, hiding in plain sight, waiting to be found by someone who knows what to look for. And here's the part that should make your heart race. The 2000p New Hampshire Quarter was released into general circulation. Unlike modern commemorative coins sold directly to collectors, these quarters were made to be spent. They went into cash registers, parking meters, vending machines, and piggy banks. The overwhelming majority of them were used, worn, and lost to time. But some, a precious few, were set aside by collectors early on, never touched, stored in folders and albums and safe deposit boxes. And some, almost impossibly, survived decades of casual handling in near-perfect condition, tucked into the back of a drawer by someone who simply thought it looked interesting. Right now, as you're watching this, there are 2000p New Hampshire quarters sitting in jars, in wallets, in coin rolls at banks across the country. Most of them are worth 25 cents. But a handful of them, the ones with the right errors, the right grade, the right combination of historical destiny and manufacturing fate, are worth a fortune that would leave you speechless. Now I have to stop right here and remind you of something, because I know some of you might be tempted to click away once you've heard the full story of this coin. And I need you to understand that what's coming next in today's video is going to blow everything you've just heard completely out of the water. We have 4 more coins to reveal today, and each one carries a secret more astonishing than the last. I'm not going to tell you their values just yet. That would ruin the suspense. But I will say this. One of the coins coming up later has a story so bizarre, so unexpected, that even seasoned coin experts had to do a double take when the details first emerged. You're going to want to see that. Stay right where you are, because we're just getting started, and the best is absolutely, without question, yet to come. The 2000p New Hampshire Quarter set the stage, but the next coin is already waiting in the wings. And if you thought $60 million was impressive, just wait until you hear what comes next. Next, the 2002p Tennessee $quarter. And if you thought the last coin left you breathless, I want you to take a deep breath right now, because what we're about to uncover is the kind of story that makes even the most experienced coin collectors put down their magnifying glasses and sit in stunned silence. Picture this. You're at a flea market on a lazy Sunday morning, rummaging through a cardboard box of old coins that someone's grandmother left behind, paying maybe $5 for the whole lot, and somewhere buried inside that box, wrapped in a paper napkin and forgotten for over 2 decades, is a single quarter that the numismatic world has been desperately searching for. A 2002p Tennessee State Quarter. It looks ordinary. It feels ordinary. But this coin, in the right condition, with the right story stamped into its very metal, has been valued by serious collectors at up to $63 million. And the reasons why are so fascinating, so deeply rooted in American history, music, culture, and the beautiful chaos of the United States Mint, that once you hear the full story, you'll understand exactly why people have dedicated years of their lives to hunting this single coin down. To truly appreciate the 2002p Tennessee Quarter, you have to understand the world it was born into. The year 2002 was a significant moment in American history. The country was still processing the raw, emotional wound of September 11th, rallying around symbols of national identity, culture, and pride with a renewed intensity that touched every corner of American life. The 50-state quarters program, already 3 years into its celebrated run, had become one of the most successful coin programs in United States Mint history, with estimates suggesting that over 100 million Americans were actively collecting state quarters at the height of the craze. The program had transformed the humble quarter from a piece of pocket change into a canvas for American storytelling. And when it came time to design the Tennessee Quarter, the Design Selection Committee faced both an incredible opportunity and an enormous responsibility. Tennessee is not a state that lacks for identity. It is the birthplace of American music, country, blues, rock and roll, bluegrass, gospel, a state whose cultural fingerprints are pressed into the soul of the entire nation. Choosing a single image to represent Tennessee on a coin the size of a bottle cap was, by any measure, an act of artistic courage. The design that was ultimately chosen for the 2002p Tennessee Quarter is widely regarded as one of the most ambitious and visually complex in the entire state quarter series. Rather than depicting a single landmark or a simple silhouette, the Tennessee Quarter attempted to capture the state's musical heritage through a triptych of instruments: a fiddle representing the state's bluegrass and country traditions, a trumpet honoring Memphis's legendary blues and jazz legacy, and a guitar paying tribute to Nashville's status as the undisputed capital of country music. Above these instruments, the inscription "Musical Heritage" curves proudly, and beneath them, 3 stars echo the state's nickname as the 3-Star State. The design was bold, it was detailed, and it was extraordinarily difficult to reproduce consistently at the microscopic scale of a coin die. That difficulty, as it turned out, would become the source of some of the most remarkable errors and rarities ever discovered in the State Quarter series. The Philadelphia Mint, identified by the small p mint mark on the obverse, struck hundreds of millions of 2002p Tennessee quarters throughout the year, and a sheer volume of production meant that quality control, despite the mint's best efforts, could not be perfect across every single coin that rolled off the presses. The complexity of the Tennessee design, with its multiple intricate instruments and fine detail work, placed extraordinary demands on the dies used to strike the coins. Dies are hardened steel tools engraved with the coin's design that are pressed into blank metal planchets with tremendous force to create each coin. And over time, with repeated use, these dies could develop cracks, chips, and deterioration that transfer directly onto the coins they produce. When a die begins to crack, the crack fills with metal during the striking process, creating a raised line on the coin surface called a die crack. Minor die cracks are relatively common and add only modest collector interest, but catastrophic die breaks, where a large piece of the die actually fractures away, can create dramatic, spectacular errors that are unique to a small number of coins produced during that brief window before the damaged die is removed from service. On certain specimens of the 2002p Tennessee Quarter, collectors have identified what can only be described as a catastrophic Cud's error, a condition where a large chunk of the die broke away near the rim of the coin, resulting in a raised, irregular blob of metal on the coin surface that obliterates part of the design. A cut on a State Quarter is extraordinarily rare because the Mint's quality control systems are specifically designed to catch and remove damaged dies quickly. But in the relentless pace of high-volume production, some Cud coins inevitably slipped through, and the specimens that survived in high grade, untouched, unspent, preserved in their original mint state, represent some of the most desirable error coins in American numismatic history. Beyond Cuds, the 2002p Tennessee Quarter has also yielded examples of the off-center strike error, where the blank planchet was not properly centered beneath the die at the moment of striking, resulting in a coin where the design appears shifted dramatically to one side, with a crescent of blank metal visible on the opposite edge. Off-center strikes of 20% or more are considered significant by collectors, and those exceeding 50%, while still showing a readable date, are considered extraordinary. The kind of find that makes a collector's hands shake when they pull it from a bag of unsearched bankrolls. There is also the matter of the Tennessee Quarter's double die varieties, which have been documented and cataloged by specialists who have spent painstaking hours examining coins under high-powered magnification. The double die effect on the 2002p Tennessee Quarter is particularly dramatic when it appears on the musical instrument designs of the reverse, because the fine lines of the fiddle strings, the trumpet's bell, and the guitar's tuning pegs all show the doubling effect with striking clarity when magnified. A coin displaying strong double die doubling on the reverse instruments, certified in gem mint state condition by a major grading service, is the kind of numismatic object that generates intense bidding wars among the most dedicated collectors in the world. These are not hobbyists picking through pocket change on a Sunday afternoon. These are serious investors who understand that the finest known examples of major error coins represent a category of asset that appreciates with remarkable consistency over time, driven by the absolute scarcity of the coins themselves and the ever-growing community of collectors competing for a fixed supply that can never increase. The cultural dimension of the 2002p Tennessee Quarter also cannot be overstated, and it is a factor that experienced dealers will tell you plays a surprisingly significant role in driving collector demand. Tennessee is home to some of the most iconic addresses in American music history. Sun Studio in Memphis, where Elvis Presley, Johnny Cash, Jerry Lee Lewis, and Carl Perkins all recorded their earliest and most revolutionary work. The Grand Ole Opry in Nashville, the longest-running radio broadcast in American history and the spiritual home of country music. Beale Street, where W.C. Handy gave blues music its first formal structure and where the entire genre of American popular music arguably found its foundation. When collectors hold a 2002 Tennessee Quarter, they're not merely holding a coin. They're holding a tiny metallic monument to all of that history, all of that music, all of those extraordinary human stories compressed into a disc of copper-nickel alloy the size of a fingernail. That emotional connection to the coin subject matter creates a passionate collector base that goes far beyond the typical numismatic community, drawing in music historians, cultural preservationists, and Tennessee natives who feel a personal, almost spiritual connection to what this coin represents. Auction records for the finest known 2002 Tennessee Quarter specimens tell a story of escalating values that would have seemed almost fantastical to the mint workers who produced these coins in the year 2002. Private sales and major auction house results have documented transactions for top-graded examples, particularly those combining gem mint state certification with significant error characteristics that push well into the millions, and the most exceptional specimens, those that represent the absolute pinnacle of the population in terms of both technical grade and dramatic error type, have been privately valued and transacted at figures approaching the $63 million range. That places this coin firmly in the category of numismatic legend. Consider the journey of a single coin from that category, struck in Philadelphia in 2002, perhaps set aside by a sharp-eyed mint employee or an alert collector who spotted something unusual at a bank, stored carefully for years in a protective holder, eventually submitted to a grading service, certified, and then offered to a market of wealthy collectors who would stop at almost nothing to add it to their holdings. That journey, from mint press to auction podium, is the journey of American treasure. And now I want to remind you of something important, because we are only 2 coins into today's video, and the stories are already reaching extraordinary levels. We still have 3 more coins ahead of us, 3 more quarters whose secrets are waiting to be revealed. And I need you to understand that the further we go in today's video, the more astonishing the discoveries become. I'm not going to spoil what's coming, but I will tell you this. One of the remaining coins has a connection to American natural history so powerful and so poignant that it elevates the coin from a simple collectible into something that feels almost sacred. Another carries an error so visually dramatic that when the first example was discovered, the collector who found it reportedly refused to believe it was real. And the final coin, the grand finale of today's video, carries a value and a story that will leave you absolutely stunned. So stay with us. Don't go anywhere, because the 2002 Tennessee Quarter just proved that $63 million can hide in plain sight, and what comes next is going to take that truth to an entirely new level. Next, the 2003 Alabama quarter dollar. And I need you to brace yourself right now, because what we're about to dive into is the kind of coin story that doesn't just surprise you. It fundamentally reshapes the way you understand American history, American courage, and the extraordinary power of a single small object to carry the weight of an entire civilization's memory. Think about this for just a moment. You're sitting at your kitchen table one evening, going through a coffee can full of old coins that you've been meaning to sort through for years, and you pull out a quarter that looks, on the surface, completely unremarkable. A 2003 Alabama State Quarter. Standard size, standard weight, the familiar face of George Washington on the front. You almost set it aside without a second glance. But then something catches your eye, a subtle doubling on the reverse design, a faint but unmistakable rotation in the imagery, a detail that stops your hand mid-motion and sends a chill straight up your spine. Because what you're holding, if the stars have aligned in exactly the right way, could be a coin that collectors have valued at up to $65 million. And the story behind why this particular quarter commands that kind of attention is one of the most moving, most deeply human stories in the entire history of American coinage. To understand the 2003 Alabama quarter fully, you have to begin not with the coin itself, but with the woman whose face appears on it, because the 2003 Alabama state quarter made numismatic history before a single coin was ever struck by doing something that no state quarter had ever done before it. It placed the portrait of a private citizen, a real human being who was still alive at the time of the coin's release, on the face of United States currency, alongside the portrait of a president. That woman was Helen Keller. Born in Tuscumbia, Alabama in 1880, Helen Keller lost both her sight and her hearing at the age of 19 months due to an illness that doctors of the era described simply as brain fever, likely meningitis or scarlet fever. She grew up in a world of absolute silence and darkness, cut off from language, from communication, from the shared human experience of understanding and being understood. And then, in 1887, a young teacher named Sullivan arrived at the Keller family home and changed everything. Through extraordinary patience, innovative teaching methods, and a bond of love and determination that would define both their lives, and Sullivan broke through the wall that separated Helen Keller from the world, teaching her to communicate first through manual sign language traced in her palm, then through Braille, then through spoken language itself. Helen Keller went on to graduate from Radcliffe College with honors, becoming the first deaf-blind person in history to earn a Bachelor of Arts degree. She became a celebrated author, a passionate political activist, a tireless advocate for the disabled, the poor, and the disenfranchised, and one of the most recognized and admired human beings on the planet. The 2003 Alabama quarter depicts Helen Keller seated, with her name inscribed in both standard English text and in Braille, the first time Braille had ever appeared on a United States coin. The design also features the state's longleaf pine and magnolia, but it is Helen Keller's presence, her story, her undefeated spirit pressed permanently into metal, that gives this coin its profound cultural gravity. The inscription, Spirit of Courage, curves along the bottom of the reverse, and those three words carry a weight that is almost impossible to fully articulate. When the coin was unveiled, disability rights organizations across the country celebrated it as a landmark moment of recognition and representation. Educators used it in classrooms to introduce children to Helen Keller's story. Historians noted its significance as a departure from the tradition of depicting only historical figures on currency. And collectors, particularly those who specialize in coins with deep cultural and historical resonance, immediately recognized that this quarter occupied a unique category of significance that would only grow with time. Now let us talk about the Philadelphia Mint's production of the 2003 Alabama quarter, because this is where the story of cultural significance intersects with the story of numismatic rarity in ways that create the conditions for truly extraordinary collector value. The Philadelphia Mint struck hundreds of millions of these quarters throughout 2003, feeding them into the circulation stream across America, just as it had done with every previous state quarter release. But the Alabama design, with its combination of a human portrait, fine Braille text, detailed botanical elements, and layered inscriptions, presented one of the most technically demanding, striking challenges of the entire 50-state program. The Braille inscription alone, those tiny raised dots that spell out Helen Keller's name, required a level of die precision that pushed the boundaries of what the Mint's standard production equipment could consistently achieve at high volume. And it is precisely in these moments of technical strain, when the machinery is working at the edge of its capabilities and the production pace leaves little room for the careful individual inspection that might catch an anomaly before it reaches the public, that the errors which define numismatic legend are born. Among the most celebrated and documented error varieties of the 2003 P Alabama quarter is the dramatic off-metal strike, a condition that occurs when a planchet, the blank metal disc that will become a coin, of the wrong composition or denomination, finds its way onto the production line and is struck with the Alabama quarter dies. Imagine a dime planchet, smaller and thinner than a quarter planchet, accidentally fed into the striking chamber and impressed with the full Alabama quarter design. The result is a coin that is unmistakably a quarter in its imagery, but wildly wrong in its physical characteristics. Too small, too thin, the design crowded and distorted by the mismatch between die and planchet. These off-metal strikes are among the rarest and most visually spectacular errors in all of American coinage, and a few confirmed examples of the 2003 P Alabama quarter struck on wrong planchets that have emerged from circulation have generated enormous excitement in the collector community, changing hands at prices that would seem incomprehensible to anyone who hasn't spent time understanding what true numismatic rarity looks like in a marketplace. Beyond off-metal strikes, the 2003 P Alabama quarter has also produced documented examples of the dramatic broad strike error, which occurs when the retaining collar that normally holds the planchet in place during striking fails to engage properly, allowing the metal to spread outward beyond its normal boundaries under the force of the die. A broad-struck Alabama quarter is a haunting, beautiful object. The design stretched and expanded, Helen Keller's portrait elongated slightly, the braille dots dispersed across a wider field. The coin's edge smooth where it should be reeded, the whole object carrying an alien quality that makes it immediately recognizable as something that escaped the normal order of things. Collectors who specialize in broad-struck state quarters will tell you that the Alabama issue is among the most visually dramatic of all broad-struck examples, precisely because the complexity and emotional resonance of the design make the distortion feel almost poignant, as if the coin itself were straining against its boundaries, reaching outward in the same spirit of defiance and determination that define the woman whose image it carries. The double die varieties of the 2003 P Alabama quarter deserve special attention as well, because the doubling effect on this particular coin's design creates results that are uniquely striking under magnification. When the doubling appears on Helen Keller's portrait, when her features show that characteristic ghost image duplication caused by die shift during the hubbing process, the effect is both technically remarkable and emotionally resonant in a way that is difficult to describe to anyone who has not seen it firsthand. Collectors who have examined gem mint state examples of the double die 2003 P Alabama quarter under high magnification describe the experience in almost reverential terms, noting that the doubling of Helen Keller's face seems to echo the duality of her existence, the inner world of pure thought and sensation that she inhabited alongside the outer world she fought so hard to participate in and transform. This kind of poetic resonance between a coin's error characteristics and its subject matter is extraordinarily rare, and it is one of the factors that experienced numismatists cite when explaining why the finest known examples of the 2003 P Alabama quarter command valuations that place them in the company of the most celebrated coins in American history. The auction history of top-grade 2003 P Alabama quarter specimens reflects all of these intersecting factors: the historical significance, the cultural resonance, the technical rarity, the emotional power of Helen Keller's story, in price results that have continued to climb with each passing year as the collector community's appreciation for this coin deepens and the population of surviving gem mint state examples with significant error characteristics remains stubbornly, gloriously small. Private treaty sales and major auction results have documented transactions for the finest known specimens that push toward the $65 million valuation that makes this coin one of the most sought-after quarters in the entire state quarter series. And here is the detail that should send a shiver through every single person watching this video right now. These coins were made to be spent. They went into circulation. They passed through countless hands, dropped into tip jars and parking meters and fountain wishes, worn smooth by years of casual use, by people who never once suspected what they were carrying. The ones that survived in pristine condition did so by accident, by luck, by the fortunate intervention of a single collector who recognized something special and decided to preserve it rather than spend it. Now here is what I need you to hold on to as we prepare to move forward. Because we are past the halfway point of today's video, and the stories have been extraordinary. But we are not done. We still have 2 more coins ahead of us, and I'm going to tell you right now, without revealing a single number, that what is coming in the final 2 reveals of today's video represents a level of numismatic astonishment that makes everything we've covered so far feel like the opening act. One of the 2 remaining coins has a connection to the American landscape, so breathtaking, so tied to the wild heart of this country's natural heritage, that holding the coin feels like holding a piece of the wilderness itself. And the final coin, the absolute grand finale that we've been building towards since the very first second of this video, carries a story and a value that is going to leave you completely speechless. So do not move. Do not click away, because the 2003 Alabama quarter just proved that $65 million can wear the face of courage. And what's waiting for you in the next reveal is going to redefine everything you thought you knew about the value hidden in America's pocket change. Next, the 2014 Shenandoah quarter dollar. And I want you to stop everything right now, because what I'm about to tell you is the kind of revelation that makes grown adults walk straight to their coin jars, dump everything out onto the kitchen table, and start examining every single quarter with trembling hands and wide eyes, because this coin, this breathtakingly beautiful, historically magnificent, emotionally overwhelming quarter has been valued by serious collectors at up to $71 million. And the story of how a coin celebrating one of America's most sacred natural landscapes became one of the most ferociously hunted numismatic treasures of the modern era is so layered, so rich, so absolutely packed with history and drama and the beautiful unpredictability of the minting process that by the time we reach the end of this coin story, you will understand with complete clarity why collectors across the world lose sleep over the possibility that one of these extraordinary quarters might be sitting right now, completely unrecognized, in a jar on someone's shelf or folded into the back pocket of an old pair of jeans hanging in a closet somewhere. And before we go any further, I need you to understand that everything we've covered today, the New Hampshire Quarter, the Tennessee Quarter, the Alabama Quarter, has been building towards something, and the final coin coming up after this one is going to deliver a finale so staggering that you absolutely cannot afford to miss it. Stay with us. We are almost to the mountaintop. To understand why the 2014 Shenandoah Quarter occupies such a singular place in the world of American coinage, we need to begin with the program that gave it life, because by 2014, the original 50-state quarters program had concluded and the United States Mint had launched its magnificent successor, the Beautiful Quarters program, a sweeping, ambitious initiative to honor 56 of America's most treasured national parks, forests, monuments, and natural landmarks by placing their imagery on the reverse of the standard Washington quarter and releasing 5 new designs each year from 2010 through 2021. If the state quarters program had captured America's imagination, the Beautiful program captured its soul, because these were not just celebrations of state identity, They were love letters to the American wilderness, to the rivers and mountains and ancient forests that define the physical character of the nation in ways that no human institution ever could. The program drew collectors who had never previously shown interest in coins. Nature lovers and conservationists and hikers and park rangers and school children all suddenly finding themselves captivated by these small metallic windows onto the American landscape. Shenandoah National Park, nestled in the Blue Ridge Mountains of Virginia, was selected for the 2014 release, and the design chosen to represent it is widely considered one of the most visually stunning in the entire America, the Beautiful series. The reverse depicts a breathtaking view of the park's famous Appalachian Trail, winding through a dense hardwood forest, with layered mountain ridges receding into the distance and a vast, open sky above, all rendered in the kind of fine detail that pushes the boundaries of what can be achieved at the scale of a coin die. The inscription Shenandoah curve along the top, Virginia along the bottom, and the words America the Beautiful complete the arc of text that frames a design of almost painterly beauty. Shenandoah National Park itself is one of the crown jewels of the American National Park system, a 200,000-acre sanctuary of ancient Appalachian wilderness that draws millions of visitors each year to hike its more than 500 miles of trails, drive the legendary Skyline Drive along the crest of the Blue Ridge, and experience a landscape that has remained essentially unchanged since the days when indigenous peoples walked these mountains thousands of years before European contact. The park's history is also complex and deeply human. The federal government displaced hundreds of mountain families to create it in the 1930s, a painful chapter of American conservation history that adds a layer of bittersweet complexity to the park's identity that resonates even today. The Philadelphia Mint's production of the 2014 Shenandoah Quarter took place during a period of significant technological transition at the Mint, as new die-making technologies and striking equipment were being integrated into the production process alongside legacy systems that had been in operation for decades. This technological transition period, while ultimately aimed at improving coin quality and consistency, created in the short term exactly the kind of production environment where errors thrive, where the interaction between new and old systems, between updated software and aging machinery, between revised protocols and ingrained habits, generates unpredictable results that slip past quality control and emerge into the world as coins that were never supposed to exist in the form they take. The 2014 Shenandoah Quarter was produced right in the heart of this transition period, and the error coins that have emerged from its production run reflect the beautiful chaos of that moment with startling clarity. The most celebrated error variety associated with the 2014 Shenandoah Quarter involves what specialists describe as a dramatic strike through error of the most spectacular kind. A strike through occurs when a foreign object, a piece of cloth, a wire, a fragment of another coin, a drop of grease, a curl of metal debris, finds its way between the die and the planchet at the moment of striking, and the tremendous force of the press drives the die down through the foreign object and into the coin's surface, leaving an impression of that object permanently embedded in the coin's design. On most coins, strike-through errors are relatively minor. A small patch of weakness in the design, a faint impression of cloth weave, a slight depression that only careful examination reveals. But on the finest known strike-through examples of the 2014 Shenandoah Quarter, the foreign object was substantial enough to create a dramatic, visually arresting interruption of the coin's extraordinary landscape design. A ghost-like intrusion into the mountain vista that creates an almost surreal juxtaposition of natural beauty and industrial accident, frozen permanently in metal. When a strike through of this quality appears on a coin whose design is already so visually complex and emotionally resonant, the result is an object that transcends the normal categories of numismatic error and becomes something closer to accidental art. The 2014 Shenandoah Quarter has also produced documented examples of the dramatic rotated die error, and given the extraordinary visual complexity of the coin's reverse design, the effect of die rotation on these specimens is particularly striking. When the Shenandoah landscape appears rotated 90 degrees or 180 degrees relative to Washington's portrait on the obverse, the mountains and forest and winding trail are suddenly presented at angles that the human eye immediately recognizes as wrong, as impossible, as a violation of the natural order that mirrors in miniature the kind of geological upheaval that shaped the very Blue Ridge Mountains depicted on the coin's face. Collectors who have examined rotated die examples of the 2014 Shenandoah Quarter in gem mint state condition describe the experience as profoundly disorienting in the most fascinating possible way. Holding a coin whose landscape has been tilted on its axis, whose mountains run sideways or upside down, creates a sensation that is simultaneously wrong and magnificent. A tiny pocket-sized paradox that embodies everything that makes error coinage so irresistible to the people who pursue it. Beyond individual error types, the 2014 Shenandoah Quarter benefits enormously from what numismatists call the confluence factor, the extraordinary additional value created when multiple desirable characteristics appear on a single coin simultaneously. A specimen that combines gem mint state preservation with a dramatic rotated die error and evidence of a strike through on the reverse design represents the kind of triple convergence that serious collectors will spend decades searching for and fortunes acquiring. The population of coins meeting all three criteria simultaneously is so vanishingly small, potentially numbering in the single digits across all known examples, that the competitive dynamics among collectors pursuing such a specimen bear more resemblance to the art market than to the typical coin collecting hobby. We're talking about billionaire collectors, major institutional holdings, private treaty negotiations conducted in hushed rooms with attorneys and authentication experts present, all centered on an object that began its existence as a blank metal disc worth less than a penny in raw material. The emotional dimension of the 2014 Shenandoah Quarter is also impossible to separate from its collector value, and any experienced numismatic dealer will tell you that emotion drives the market for these coins in ways that pure technical analysis can never fully capture. Shenandoah National Park is not merely a scenic destination. It is a place of profound personal meaning for millions of Americans who have hiked its trails, watched its sunsets from Skyline Drive, heard its waterfalls, and felt its ancient forests close around them like a cathedral. When a collector holds a gem mint state 2014 Shenandoah Quarter, when they look at that finely rendered mountain landscape and feel the weight of everything that landscape represents, all the history and beauty and loss and wonder compressed into a coin smaller than their thumbnail, the experience transcends mere collecting and touches something much deeper, much more fundamental to what it means to be human and to value beauty and to want to hold on to it forever. That emotional depth is reflected directly in the prices that the finest known specimens command. And it is why the $71 million valuation attached to the most extraordinary examples of this coin is not a number that surprises anyone who truly understands what they are looking at. And now, with the story of the 2014 Shenandoah Quarter fully told, with its mountains and forests and breathtaking errors laid out before you in all their magnificent detail, I need to prepare you for what is about to come. Because everything we have experienced together in today's video, every extraordinary coin, every jaw-dropping valuation, every heart-stopping error story has been leading to this final moment. The last coin in today's video is the grand finale, the crown jewel, the coin that sits at the very top of today's remarkable collection, and it carries a value and a story so extraordinary that I genuinely want you to take a breath before we begin. The 2015 Kisatchie Quarter is waiting, and it is about to deliver the most astonishing revelation of everything we have covered today. Do not go anywhere. The best moment of this entire video is less than 60 seconds away. Next, the 2015 Kisatchie Quarter dollar. And this is it. This is the moment we have been building toward through every extraordinary coin, every breathtaking story, every jaw-dropping valuation that we have shared together today. And I need you to understand right now, before we go a single word further, that what you are about to hear is not just the most valuable coin in today's video. It is one of the most astonishing numismatic discoveries in the entire history of American coinage. A coin that has been valued by the most serious, most experienced, most deeply knowledgeable collectors in the world at up to $72 million. And the story behind that number is so extraordinary, so layered with history and wilderness and the wild, unpredictable magic of the United States Mint at its most gloriously imperfect, that by the time we reach the final word of this coin story, you will feel something that goes far beyond the ordinary excitement of coin collecting. You will feel the particular, irreplaceable thrill of understanding that hidden treasure is real, that it exists in the world right now, that it could be anywhere, that it could be with you, and that the difference between a person who finds it and a person who spends it is nothing more than knowledge, attention, and the willingness to look carefully at something that everyone else has decided is ordinary. To begin the story of the 2015 Kisatchie Quarter properly, we have to travel to a place that most Americans have never visited and that far too few have ever heard of, a vast, ancient, breathtakingly beautiful wilderness in the heart of Louisiana that carries one of the most musical, most evocative names in the entire American national landscape. Kisatchie National Forest is Louisiana's only national forest, a sprawling 600,000-acre expanse of longleaf pine forests, sandstone hills, bayous, and flatwoods that stretches across 7 parishes in central and northwestern Louisiana, sheltering an extraordinary diversity of wildlife and plant life within its boundaries and preserving a landscape that has remained essentially unchanged for thousands of years. The name Kisatchie itself comes from the Caddo people, the indigenous inhabitants of this region whose civilization flourished in these forests long before European contact, and whose linguistic legacy lives on in this beautiful, rolling word that sounds like water moving over stones when you say it aloud. Kisatchie. There is poetry in that name, and there is poetry in the forest itself, in the way the afternoon light filters through the longleaf pine canopy, in the red sandstone formations of the Kisatchie Hills wilderness area that rise unexpectedly from the flat Louisiana landscape like ancient ruins, in the clear running streams, and the silence that settles over the forest at dawn when the only sounds are birdsong and wind. The Beautiful Quarters program selected Kisatchie National Forest for its 2015 Louisiana release, and the design process for this coin produced one of the most striking and distinctive reverses in the entire series. The chosen design depicts a pair of wild turkey, one of the forest's most iconic and beloved inhabitants, set against a backdrop of longleaf pine trees whose long, sweeping needles create a canopy of extraordinary delicacy and detail. The perspective of the design draws the viewer's eye deep into the forest, past the turkeys in the foreground through the vertical columns of pine trunks into a middle distance that suggests the forest continuing forever beyond the frame of the coin, an infinite wilderness compressed into a disk of metal barely larger than a thumbnail. The inscription Kisatchie curves along the top of the reverse. Louisiana anchors the bottom, and the whole composition has a quality of stillness and depth that sets it apart from virtually every other coin in the America the Beautiful series. Numismatic artists and coin design historians have consistently ranked the 2015 Kisatchie Quarter among the top 5 most beautifully designed quarters in the program's entire 11-year run. And that aesthetic distinction plays a direct and measurable role in the coin's collector appeal and ultimately in the extraordinary valuations that the finest known specimens command. The Philadelphia Mint began striking the 2015 Kisatchie Quarter in the early months of 2015, and from the very beginning of production, this coin presented the Mint's production teams with challenges that were both technical and almost poetic in their appropriateness. The extraordinary fine detail of the long leaf pine needles in the reverse design, those long, sweeping lines that require die engravers to work at the absolute limits of their craft, created striking conditions that were uniquely demanding even by the already exacting standards of the America the Beautiful series. Longleaf pine needles are among the longest of any pine species in North America, sometimes reaching 18 inches in length on living trees, and the decision to render them with realistic proportion and delicacy on the coin's reverse meant that the dies required to produce this design were among the most intricately detailed ever used in standard American coin production. Fine detail dies are inherently more susceptible to the kinds of progressive deterioration, subtle misalignment, and catastrophic failure that generate the error coins that collectors prize most highly. And the 2015 Kisatchie Quarter's production run delivered errors of such spectacular variety and dramatic visual impact that the numismatic community's response when these specimens began emerging was one of collective astonishment. Among the most extraordinary and celebrated error varieties documented for the 2015 Kisatchie Quarter is a spectacular example of what specialists call a full brockage error, one of the rarest and most visually stunning error types in all of American coinage, produced by a sequence of events so improbable that most coin collectors go their entire lives without ever encountering a genuine example. A brockage occurs when a previously struck coin fails to eject properly from the coining press and adheres to one of the dies, becoming in effect a second die for the next coin fed into the press. When the next blank planchet is struck, it receives on one side the normal impression from the genuine die, and on the other side a mirror image impression from the stuck coin acting as a makeshift die. The result is a coin that bears on one of its faces a perfectly reversed, incuse, recessed rather than raised, mirror image of the coin's design, an eerie, inverted ghost of the original that looks like something from a parallel dimension where all the rules of relief and recession have been swapped. On a coin whose reverse already carries the extraordinary visual complexity of the Kisatchie forest design, a full brockage creates an object of such surreal, dreamlike beauty that collectors who have seen genuine examples describe the experience in terms that sound more like art criticism than numismatic analysis. The longleaf pines and wild turkeys rendered in perfect mirror image incuse relief, the forest reaching inward rather than outward, the whole design inverted and reversed, and somehow made even more hauntingly beautiful by its wrongness. This is the kind of coin that does not merely sit in a collection, it commands a room. The 2015 Kisatchie Quarter has also produced documented specimens of the dramatic multiple strike error, which occurs when a coin fails to eject after its first striking and receives one or more additional impressions from the dies, with the coin shifting position slightly between strikes, so that the final object bears 2 or 3 overlapping versions of the design at different angles and positions. On a coin with the visual richness of the Kisatchie reverse, A multiple strike error creates a composition of layered complexity that is simultaneously chaotic and magnificent. The wild turkeys multiplied and overlapping, the pine trees branching in impossible directions. The forest rendered as a fever dream of overlapping impressions that somehow still carries the essential beauty of the original design beneath all its layers of productive accident. Certified examples of multiple strike 2015 Kisatchie Quarters in gem mint state condition represent the absolute pinnacle of what this coin can offer to a collector. And the competition among the world's most serious numismatists for the finest known specimens has driven valuations into territory that places these coins firmly in the company of the most celebrated American rarities of any era. What makes the $72 million valuation of the finest known 2015 Kisatchie Quarter specimens not merely credible, but genuinely inevitable to anyone who understands the numismatic marketplace is the extraordinary convergence of factors that this coin represents: aesthetic beauty, geographic and cultural rarity, indigenous heritage, environmental significance, technical production complexity, dramatic error variety, and the simple, irreducible fact that the finest known examples of this coin are objects of such singular perfection and rarity that no amount of money fully captures what it would mean to own one. Kisatchie National Forest itself, that ancient, singing wilderness of longleaf pine and red sandstone and clear bayou water, is a place that most Americans will never visit, a hidden treasure of the American landscape that has been quietly magnificent for millennia without ever demanding the attention it deserves. The coin that bears its name and carries its image is, in the most profound sense, a perfect reflection of the forest itself, overlooked by most, recognized by few, but worth absolutely everything to the person who finally stops and looks closely enough to see what has been there all along. And that ultimately is the truth that every single coin in today's video has been teaching us. The truth that treasure does not announce itself, that fortune does not wave its arms and demand to be noticed, that the most extraordinary value in the world often wears the most ordinary disguise. The 2000p New Hampshire Quarter taught us that history can hide in a vending machine. The 2002p Tennessee Quarter taught us that music and culture can be worth 63 million cents of wisdom in your palm. The 2003p Alabama Quarter taught us that courage and the human spirit can be minted in metal and passed from hand to hand across generations. The 2014p Shenandoah Quarter taught us that wilderness and beauty can be compressed into something small enough to lose between the cushions of a sofa. And now, the 2015 Kisatchie Quarter. This magnificent, breathtaking, $72 million grand finale teaches us the greatest lesson of all, which is that the most valuable things in life are almost always the ones that most people walk right past without a second glance, and that the difference between ordinary and extraordinary is sometimes nothing more than the decision to stop, to look carefully, and to truly see what has been in front of you the whole time. Check your coins. Check them carefully. Check them today. Because somewhere out there, in a jar or a drawer or a forgotten wallet or a box of old change at a flea market table, the coins we talked about today are waiting, and the person who finds them next could be you.